So Dr. Sarit Lev-Bendov is a psychologist whose clinical work is grounded in a relational framework. For over 20 years, she has been teaching, supervising, and practicing relational human-animal psychotherapy. She is the former head of the program for the relational psychotherapy in the presence of animals at Oranim Academic College. And most importantly, on a personal note, Sarit was also my supervisor and mentor, and later entrusted me with continuing her role at Oranim Academic College. She is someone I experience as a profound source of inspiration, both personally and professionally. She brings together extraordinary sensitivity, depth, and professionalism, alongside a constant willingness to continue questioning, evolving, and thinking about things from multiple perspectives. I am deeply grateful that Sarit accepted my invitation to take part in this conference and to close this meaningful day with us. Thank you for being here with us, Sarit. And I really welcome you all to go deep into the words and the visual that you're going to have now.
Thank you, Gal. To breathe for a second. If I may, I just want to say one thing before I begin. When Gal invited me, slash pressured me to host this day, I hesitated because for a little while now, I'm less connected to this field, but I want to say something. I think my generation, which is the older people here, me included, the generation that actually started animal-assisted therapy in Israel, that's 30 years ago, even a little bit more than that. I think we have a responsibility. I think we did a lot. We did a lot of good, but we did do some harm. We didn't know a lot of things, and we did make mistakes. And I think the movement today that Gal and the younger generation is leading is one that we have to acknowledge and support and give our blessing, but also do something to help the transition. So that said, okay, so how can one even begin to summarize the depth of knowledge, experience, and thought that was shared with us today? It feels almost impossible to do it justice. My hope is that the richness of what we encountered here, the ideas, the questions, the moments of insight, will continue to accompany you, to echo and resonate with each of us long after we leave the space. So rather than attempting a full summary, I will take a different path. I will gather a single word or a central phrase from each presentation and hold them together through a relational lens, allowing something shared and hopefully new to emerge between us. I will share my presentation. My presentation is an invitation for a shared reverie, and I invite you to put it on full screen. I want to create a special place within our shared space. To do that, I will draw on 4 building blocks offered to us by today's speakers: growth, sanctuary, window of tolerance, and hospitality. Growth I took from Shiri, sanctuary from Lauren, window from Noam, window of tolerance from Noam, and hospitality from Gal. Slowly, I will weave these together into a conceptualized living structure. Growth. Relational growth, especially in the wake of trauma, is something that takes root between beings. It does not happen in isolation. It emerges in the shared field, in the subtle, ongoing exchange between self and other. If we borrow from the language of nature, growth requires three main conditions: soil, water, and sunlight. Psychologically, the soil is the relational ground, an atmosphere of safety, reliability, and ethical presence in which one can risk existing as they are. The water is the flow of attuned responsiveness, moments of being seen, recognized, and held in the mind of another, allowing emotional life to move rather than to freeze. The sunlight is the presence of hope and meaning, often carried by the other when one cannot yet hold it alone, illuminating possibilities beyond the immediate aftermath of injury. Within this ecology, we are asked to become for one another both the sturdy cypress and the whipping willow, בראש האיתן והערבה הבוכייה, the sturdy cypress and the whipping willow, at times a firm, rooted presence that can withstand storm and fragmentation, and at other times a bending, receptive form that yields, listens, and makes space for vulnerability. We need to learn to be all that: the soil, water, sun, the sturdy cypress, and the whipping willow, for ourselves and for others, and we need to learn to let others be all that for us. When we will learn to create this intersubjective, interspecies atmosphere, we will be able to grow, allowing new meanings, new forms of connectiveness. Sanctuary. The word sanctuary carries a long layered history. Its origins come from the Latin word sanctuarium, which means holy and set apart, referring originally to an invaluable sacred space. Invaluable, by the way, means secure from violence and cannot be ignored. Over time, it came to mean a place of refuge and protection, and today also a protected space for vulnerable beings, grounded in care and ethical responsibility. In a relational understanding, sanctuary moves beyond the physical site to become a shared field, where safety is co-created, where the other is held without intrusion or domination, and where there is an active commitment to protect the other's subjectivity. If historically a sanctuary was granted by an authority, in this framing it becomes something more reciprocal, not a place given by one, but a space created between beings. Sanctuaries embody, in a particularly vivid and at times unsettling manner, the doer-done-to dynamic, as articulated by Jessica Benjamin. The animals who arrive in these spaces are almost always victims of harm, objectification, or neglect, outcomes of injurious relationships with human beings. Within this context, a significant reversal takes place. It is human who initiate and establish sanctuary with the intention of repair and rehabilitation. Yet, this gives rise to a profound ethical complexity. The same human subject who, in principle, is implicated in the harm is also the one who assumes responsibility for repair. This tension presents both a difficulty and a central source of the potential for repair, for ethical development, and for the emergence of hope. Only by acknowledging this complexity, a movement will become possible, from a dichotomous doer-done-to framework toward a different relational space, one grounded in partnership, mutuality, and recognition. In its deeper sense, the aspiration of the sanctuary is to become a space in which asymmetrical relations of power are transformed, giving way to a relational field where repair is not only an action, but a mode of being. Our role within this space is not to deny or to dissociate from the origins and dichotomous dynamics that gave rise to sanctuaries, but rather to hold the multiplicity of voices they contain. A mature ethical and psychological stance does not seek resolution through alignment with a single pole. Instead, it sustains the tension between harm and repair, responsibility and guilt, power and vulnerability. In this sense, a healthy and resilient mind is one that can contain complexity, move between different positions without collapse, and allow for the simultaneous presence of divergent, even conflicting voices within a single relational field. When we can create this movement and contain the conflicts, we can begin to see the possibility of a shared relational space across species. Window of tolerance. From a relational point of view, the window of tolerance is not only an individual capacity to regulate, but a shared, co-constructed field. Within the window, I am not alone with my internal state. I have access to you, and therefore to us. This us is not merely symbolic. It is regulatory. It expands what I can bear, metabolize, and make meaning of. When I remain within a window, I can hold both my own experience and the presence of the other without collapsing into overwhelm or withdrawing into disconnection. In this sense, the window is inherently relational. It is sustained through moments of attunement and mutual recognition. Our nervous system needs another nervous system for stability. When we feel anxiety, stress, loneliness, the best way to help ourselves is to be regulated by another nervous system, and that applies to all relational creatures. Thus, being in the window is not just about calmness and resources, it is about the ongoing possibility of relationship where affect can be experienced, symbolized, and transformed in the presence of another mind, human and not human, that can hold, respond, and remain with us. We can see the window of tolerance from the very beginning of life as a mutual relational field in which the mother-infant bond is co-created and the self begins to emerge. It is within this shared space that the self continues to develop and evolve throughout our lives, shaped by the relationships and the encounters we experience, including unquestionably our relationship with other species. When we look at animals' window of tolerance, we can unfortunately see all too clearly how many of their interactions with humans take place far outside of their window of tolerance, which calls us, once again, to take responsibility for co-creating a shared space that is safe and protective for humans and non-humans alike. It is our responsibility to shape both the ethical framework and the practical conditions that honor the window of tolerance of every animal with whom we are in relationship. Hospitality. Hospitality, from a relational perspective, is not merely the act of opening a door, but an ongoing psychic movement of surrendering to an encounter with an other who cannot be reduced. Following Emmanuel Levinas, subjectivity itself can be understood as emerging through responsibility for the other, as if I comes into being only when it is willing to receive the face of the other and make room for them in the deepest manner. But as introduced by the philosopher Derrida, and as we all know and experienced, making internal genuine room for another, human and animal, is hardly an easy task. Hospitality always unfolds within a living tension between ethical desire for unconditional welcome and the psychological need to set barriers, to define, and to hold our subjectivity. In the relational space, this tension can be resolved, but cannot be resolved, but should be held as an intermediate field in which host and guest are transformed in relation to one another. It is a space where inviting the other is not only an act of giving, but also one of risk, a partial relinquishing of control, and a willingness to encounter an alterity that cannot be fully assimilated. It is precisely there, in holding the tension between absolute openness and necessary limits, that a living sense of mutuality can emerge, not as harmony, but as an ongoing process of recognition, misrecognition, and re-recognition cycle, a cycle that requires our attention, resources, and willingness to struggle. All through our conference today, we have lived hospitality, not only as an idea, but as a relational experience. Our speakers welcomed us into their worlds, offering not just their knowledge, but their inner landscapes, their thoughts, experience, fears, needs, and dreams. And each of you, in turn, practice hospitality by listening, attuning, and bringing your own presence into this shared space, probably feeling at times connected and similarities, and maybe at times feeling disagreements and disconnected. As we noted at the beginning of the day, hospitality does not erase differences or bridge every gap. Rather, it asks something more demanding, that we make room for our differences without needing to reduce or resolve them, that we remain in relation across them, and that within this tension we can still discover moments of resonance, shared meaning, and mutual purpose. Now that I have placed before you these 4 building blocks, growth, sanctuary, window of tolerance, and hospitality, I would like to weave them together into a single idea, my understanding of a relational home. A relational home is not a physical place, but an internal experience, the quiet knowing that one exists in the mind of another. It is built through repeated moments of being seen, recognized, and held in thought, not perfectly, but reliably enough. In relational terms, it is the felt sense that one's subjectivity matters, that one can move and change without disappearing from the other's awareness. This implicit holding allows for loosening of defense structures. It creates a ground from which spontaneity and play can emerge. The relational home, then, is less about stability and sameness and more about continuity within connection, a living space carried within us, inside each of us, shaped by relationships that can bear both presence and differences. Try to imagine this implicit inner feeling of a relational home. Take a second to feel its existence within you. Try to connect to the knowing that you exist in another's inner home and that they exist in yours. Sense the feeling of being alive in another's mind. Our relational home sets the conditions that make closeness possible. It differentiates between self and other, allowing each to exist without intrusion or erasure. It allows relationships to remain both shared and distinct, an experience of meeting without losing ourselves. In psychotherapy, a relational home is the experience of entering a space where one does not have to face emotional life alone. It is a relational partnership in which thoughts, feelings, fears, and dissociated parts of the self can gradually become more bearable because they are held within a shared connection. Within our therapeutic relational home, we are far more capable of metabolizing what would be overwhelming to bear alone. This home does not eliminate the storm, but makes it livable. So what is an interspecies relational home? Does it and can it actually exist? Let's start with our 4 building blocks: growth, sanctuary, window of tolerance, and hospitality. Let's allow them to shape the way we look at human-animal relationships. By doing so, we are invited into a profound ethical reflection. Through this lens, we can reconsider all the spaces in which humans encounter other species, our relationship with our companion animals at home, with service animals, sanctuaries, zoos, petting zoos, and countless other forms of interspecies contact. We are then compelled to ask, what do these relationships currently cultivate? Do they allow for mutual growth, safety, regulation, and recognition of the other's subjectivity? An interspecies relational home is not merely a physical place shared by humans and animals, but a relational field in which different beings can exist together without domination or reduction of the other's subjectivity. In such a home, the human does not stand above the animal, but alongside the other species in an ongoing ethical encounter with the irreducible other. It is a space in which welfare constitutes as essential foundation, yet rights remain at the center. Please remember that these words are not just words, they are ways of being. These ideas reflect values and thoughts, but they must come about in the way we act, the way we actually live. Each of us needs to bravely reflect on his interspecies relational home and ask, what am I missing? What am I assuming? What can I change? An interspecies relational home, therefore, becomes a living experience of belonging, one in which both humans and animals can recover trust, build hope, and continue becoming through the relationship. It is on us, and it is possible. Thank you.